This unit introduces you to different type of seam finishes and their uses. By the end of this unit, a student will be able to list the different type of seam operation done on garment. Describe the use of each type of seam. Exercise Superimpose seam. Superimpose seam means to join two ply together. The dimension of fabric lengthwise 10 inches, widthwise 6 inches. Now here we are using two different color because of to identify easily which is the lower ply and which is the upper ply. The demonstration of superimpose seam. The dimension of material 10 inches of lengthwise and 6 inches of widthwise. Exercise Superimpose seam finishing. Place both ply under pressure foot as per seam allowance required. Here we are taking 1 inch seam allowance. Students are advised they should not mark on fabric. This area is called seam allowance. This can be 1 centimeter, 2 centimeter, 1 inch, half an inch. Is depend on what kind of garment you are going to stitch. Try to drive it slow your machine and concentrate length and width of the seam allowance. Start with bar tack and finish with bar tack. Superimpose seam exercise is over. The right side of this one and the bottom side of this one. This is the superimpose seam, and if you open this seam, change the position of your material and open this seam allowance with the help of press like this. It means this superimpose is become superimpose with press open seam. Next seam is a French seam. We have a 2 ply with us. This one is the lower ply and this is the upper ply. The dimension of both ply will remain same. Check the position of material. This is the right side of the fabric because in this material we don't have a wrong or right size. That's why we mark pencil. And bottom side is also right side is here. It means in these two ply wrong side facing each other. This is the wrong side, this is the wrong side. Right side of material is this one and bottom side is also right side down. Place both ply under the pressure foot and stitch 4 mm away of raw edges. 4 mm away of raw edges means if you have a total seam allowance is a 1 centimeter, then divide in ratio 4 and 6. In this exercise we have a 2 operation. The first operation seam allowance is 4 mm and the second operation seam allowance is remain 6 mm. The first operation we are going to continue. Start with bar tack. continue 4 mm. In 1 centimeter there is a 10 mm is there. Finish with bar tack. This seam allowance is a 4 mm. Now the second operation, we will take seam allowance 6 mm. These are the raw edges and this area is a we call seam allowance. From this point to that point distance is a 4 mm, means less than half centimeter. First step we already cover. Second step, open the ply. Now look at here, wrong side is visible here and the right side on the bottom side. In second step, you are advised nail press it, this seam, and fold it again this way, fold it this way, keep it flat and crease it. Place the ply, both ply under the pressure foot and start stitching 6 mm seam allowance. Start with bar tack, follow 6 mm seam allowance. In 1 centimeter 4 mm is already consumed and remaining margin is a 6 mm. Finish with bar tack. From the finish edges to stitch line, this is the 6 mm seam allowance. This is the wrong side of material. Open the ply. This is the wrong side of exercise and right side is here and there is no raw edges is visible. This exercise or this kind of seam finishes mostly apply on sheer fabric, transparent fabric and lightweight fabric. Flat and fill seam. Fabric dimension will remain same. Fabric position, top ply right side up, lower ply red color right side down. It means wrong side facing each other. This is the right side of material. This is the right side of material. Wrong side facing each other. Ply placement is the lower ply is 1 centimeter bigger than upper one or upper ply 1 centimeter shorter than lower one. Means in placement of ply from this point to that point to the other plies raw edges, the distance is a 1 centimeter. This is a total 1 centimeter distance is here. This is the raw edges, this is the raw edges and we have to be overlap these raw edges on the top ply. And stitch on raw edges. see the demonstration. Flattened fill seam have a two operation if you are using lock stitch machine. This is first operation we are going to perform. Otherwise, for the flattened fill seam, you can utilize feed of the arm machine. Fold the raw edges and stitch on raw edges. This is the raw edges and stitch on very close to raw edges. Look at here, the stitch are very close to raw edges. These are the raw edges. If you touch again and again, there is a possibility to fray. So don't try to touch it again and again, these raw edges. This is the finish edges and the first operation is over. Now prepare yourself for second operation. After the first operation, exercise will look like this. These are the raw edges. This one is the finish edges. Open this ply towards raw edges side. Nail press it. Wrong side on top. Turn it out. This is the right side. First operation is over. Look at the situation of first operation. Now we are concealing raw edges. These are the raw edges and we are turning this one towards raw edges side and stitch on finish edges. Start with bar tack. Stitch on edge. Raw edges is going to conceal. Finish with bar tack. Stitch on edge means stitch should be 1 mm away of edge. Look at here, this is the edges and the stitch are very close to here. This is the right side of material. Right side is this one. This is the right side and wrong side of material is this one. See the seam performance. This is the wrong side of your garment or whatever material and right side is this one. While we are using lock stitch machine, we require two operations. The first operation was this one, which is visible by white thread, and the second operation, bobbin thread is here, and this is the needle thread. But if you require one operation, it is advisable use feed of the arm machine. You can save one operation using feed of the arm machine. Exercise bias bound and Hong Kong seam finish. These are two different type of seam finish. One is a bias bound, second one is a Hong Kong seam finish. The sample dimension will be the remain same, and the first step we have done superimpose seam finish with 1 inch distance. This is the superimposed seam in same dimension fabric we finished. This one is the first step. The second step is we press open superimposed seam. In this exercise, we are going to finish these raw edges either is a bias bound or Hong Kong finish. These one raw edges and this one raw edges. Seam can be bias bound or Hong Kong. This is first stage and this one is the second stage. Now come to the preparation. For this exercise, we require bias strip. Bias strip means this is the lengthwise material. This one is also lengthwise material. Means green line is here, green line is here, and the widthwise material is here, 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 here. If you fold this material on 45-degree angle, it will be on bias. Means green line is here, off green is this side, and this direction is become true bias. Let me explain you on separate fabric. Green direction is visible here by pencil mark. This is continue. This is the green line, this is the green line, and this one is a selvage area, because green line always run parallel to the selvage. So this one is a green line, this is the green line, this area is a off grain, and we trim it on 45-degree angle. So this area is become true bias. This mark is from this raw edges to pencil mark. The width is a 1.5 inches. We will use for demonstration purpose, and we will trim from this point to the end of this point. It means if we will slash on pencil mark, so this remain area will be bias strip. See the exercise. We separated bias strip from the piece of fabric. Length of this bias strip can be vary as per the requirement. You can take big piece of the fabric if you require more length is there, or you can join here. The width of this bias strip is a 1.5 inches, which is good enough for either is a bias bound or Hong Kong finish. Look at here, the grain mark of this bias strip is changed. It is running parallel to the selvage. Next stage, after cutting this bias strip, crease this bias strip on center. We are using two different color. Look at here. This is the midway of this bias strip. Fold it like this and crease by nail pressing or by press. This is the preparation of Hong Kong seam finish. Now let's demonstrate how to fix this bias strip with raw edges. These raw edges we are going to finish by bias strip. Ready bias strip is here, which is already folded. In first step, we will hold this ply and attach this bias strip with 4 mm seam allowance only in this ply. With 4 mm seam allowance. Place the raw edges under pressure foot. Place bias strip also on raw edges and stitch with 4 mm seam allowance. Align bias strip with raw edges and stitch 4 mm distance from raw edges. Start with bar tack, finish with bar tack. Bias strip is attached with raw edges. Look at here, from here to here, this distance is a 4 mm. Here we have a folded edges. And on single ply we attach this bias strip. Next operation, nail press bias strip towards raw edges. Look at the situation. Seam allowance is totally towards bias strip side, not towards the fabric side. These are the raw edges of bias strip and the fabric. Next operation, fold this bias strip to develop piping towards the wrong side of material and stitch in ditch. Stitch and ditch means stitch should be close to the edges, not on edges, should be close to the edges, should not be visible on red color material. Fold the ply or bias strip inside and be careful, stitch should not be away of edges and not on edges. Be careful while you stitching. There can be chances of ply slippage. Try to balance is width of the bias strip, pipe in and take care of stitches. This Hong Kong seam is finished and we also call this one pipe in finish. Now look at the pipe in width is from here to here, here to here, here to here is similar. Look at the bottom side. This kind of seam finish application for female wear to finish neckline, sleeve bottom finishing, center back any opening is there, etc. Hong Kong seam finish it complete. This is the wrong side of seam and this one is the right of side of the seam. Look at here, we have a fine finish on the both sides. Stitches are not visible. Look at other side also. Stitches are not visible. Seam are perfect. Now look at this area. The seam is overlap of bias strip. This is not acceptable. Next is stitches are away of edge. This is also not acceptable. So be careful while you stitching. Stitch should be close to the edges, which is we called stitch in ditch. This kind of seam finish is applicable for female wear to finish the neckline, to finish the any opening and preferably for lightweight material. This is the center mark of this. Fold the raw center mark right in between two raw edges 2 to 3 step. Fold strip taking care of should be upper ply or 2 mm construction seam. With bias strip we have to finish raw edge. This side one. Here we edges finish by strip with us, that is mm bigger than edges bound. Strip with taking care that bigger part bottom side have a one or lift your pressure, sandwich your raw edges and stitch on repeating edges. Look at edges are going to single ply. We are repeat the on other side. Thank you. Complete. Look at here. Look at the bottom. Avoid. See, raw edges are concealed in between bias strip, accurate. Page stitch is found side as well as bottom side, and bottom side no slippage because the lower ply was upper one. That's why extend. You have come to the end of this unit. To summarize, in this unit, you have understood the different types of seam operation done on garment and learned how the use of each type. Thank you.